Hey, I'm Brad Miller, and today here with Jason Medford, and we are walking a spiritual path. And today, I want to talk about my experience from this morning. I know we've talked about how a lot of times the personal experiences, the things that's happened to us, are often the best kind of things to talk about. Um, you may have something similar happen to you. There may be lessons that you kind of learn from it. So today I want to figured we talk about something that happened to me this very morning, in fact. So I know in the past we've talked about how I like to go hiking, particularly on days where we're going to be recording episodes. I like to go to some place quiet so I can kind of calm my mind. I can kind of connect, be with nature, and really be able to listen for what needs to come up for these podcast topics. In the past, I had the monkey wrench episode came that way. Was sitting there and quiet, and all of a sudden, monkey wrench popped in my head. And if you're not sure what that episode is, go back and search and find that one. I think you'll like that one. So this is kind of a regular thing I like to do. The weather is beautiful today. We're finally having some nice weather. It's not raining. It's so the paths have dried out. They're not muddy and things. So I'm like, I'm gonna take advantage of this morning. So another thing before we get to that, another thing that I know we've talked about is every morning I pick an animal card, animal medicine. And today I picked the card of Coyote, which is the trickster, which means lessons are to be learned. Sometimes painful, usually hilarious in some way, and a kind of reminder to laugh, not to take things too seriously, right? All right, so go over to my trail where I go hiking, and I get over there and I set my intention. I'm here today. I want to connect with nature. I've kind of felt like I've been kind of in the house a lot and haven't really had a lot of connections with trees and things like that. I want to have some peace and quiet. I want some time that I can connect. I'm open to listen to whatever messages, whatever medicine needs to come to me. Obviously, coyotes kind of back there, but whatever medicine I need to receive, I'm here and open for it. And then also try to come up with anything that needs to come out with us today for our podcast topic. So, like, all right, so got on the path, got to my walk to my usual spot where I like to go, where I can actually sit, and kind of usually sit down and meditate and kind of get quiet. So I started doing that, sat down, got my stuff all situated, got my deep breaths going, kind of started relaxing and trying to get into the idea of clearing my mind. And all of a sudden, I heard voices. And Jason's laughing. They were not voices in my head this time. They were not
I
coming
know
from my
we
head.
have to clarify. We have to
It's
clarify. Yeah.
it is important that is a thing sometimes, but it was not voices in my head. It was come from outside someplace. So I'm looking around trying to figure out what's going on with these voices are, and they sound like kind of like kids. And I'm like, well, I'm not like next close to a school or anything, so I'm not. I don't I don't know why I would be hearing kids from there, and I was wasn't sure what was going on. Why would I hear confused about why am I hearing kids on a Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, right? Like you're being school, like I'm here to have a peace and quiet, and all I'm hearing is these kids. And so I kind of kept looking, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. And then I saw down the path, I see a group of like a dozen kids and some parents coming down the path. And my first thought was, well, there goes the neighborhood, right? There goes my peace and quiet that I was hoping to have my time. And so I just kind of stood up and took a drink of water and things like that and was like, okay, well, huh. And as I'm doing that, one of the stories that Jason you've told on this
Mhm.
podcast episode before popped into mind. And it was the story where you were living back in LA and you
Mhm.
wanted to get some peace and quiet from your house. So you wanted to go up in the mountains, figured I'm going to go up, get some peace and quiet, find some place I can sit and be with nature, whatever. Basically the same thing I was kind of trying to do this morning, right? So you went up, and I think like the first road was closed, so you had to take a different, someplace different. And then the next place, there was some people there when that you found, so you had to walk away. And the third one, there was like a biker gang or something, and like you could hear highway noises and stuff, and you're like, I just give up, right?
Yeah.
So you drove home. You said, heck with all this. You drove home and you sat down in your backyard, and you sat there and you're like, wow, it's really peaceful and quiet here.
Yeah. Yeah, so for people that haven't heard this story before, I'll just recount it here, right? Because I think it goes along with what we're talking about today. So yeah, when I was living in LA, 20, 25 million people, right? In the area there. And so you always hear things, right? And I actually at the time I lived kind of a couple miles one way was one airport, a couple miles the other way was a military base, so I'd hear aircraft overhead and all kinds of different things. I was about a mile and a half or so from the freeway, and so sometimes you could hear the freeway noise, the cars. And so, yeah, one day I decided, hey, um, I can't remember if it was what day of the week it was, but it's like I want some peace and quiet, right? I want to get away. I'd hiked up in the mountains just outside of LA many times, and there was one particular trail that nobody, not that they didn't know about it, but there was never anybody there, right? And you could hike in for like miles and you wouldn't see anybody. So I thought, today I'm going to drive up to that place, right? And I'm just going to go in a little ways. I know there's not going to be anybody there. It's going to be really quiet. And LA is kind of a funny place because it's kind of surrounded by mountains on the one side and then the ocean on the other side. And there's only a few places where you can actually drive up into the mountains from LA. And so, where I needed to go, I started driving that way, and I get, you know, almost to kind of the mouth of the canyon where you kind of go up, and all of a sudden the traffic really starts slowing down. And I'm like, what's going on? Right? There's usually never anybody on this road. And so, the traffic is slowly moving, slowly moving, slowly moving, and we get up there, and all of a sudden there's police officers making everybody turn around and go back because something had happened. There was an accident or something, and so they closed the road. So I'm like, great. Okay. So I try to think about, okay, well, there's another place about 10 miles this way, back to the west where I can get up. So I guess I'll go that way and just try to see what I can find. And so, I drive along, I go up, into the mountains. I'm probably 6,000 feet up above. I can see down into the valley. Uh, and there were a few cars, but not too much. Not a lot of places to pull over. But I found a place kind of up on the top where I could look out. It was a beautiful view. There was parking there. There was kind of a little place where I could walk down just a little bit and kind of sit on a rock right there. And I thought, aha, I found my peace and quiet, right? And so I get out of the car, I go over and I sit down, and there's a few cars that are going by, but it's not that big a deal. And so I sit down, and literally within a couple of minutes, all of a sudden I hear this rumbling. And I'm like, what's going on? Right. And all of a sudden, about 50 or 70 motorcycles showed up and parked right where I was parking. I mean, the whole thing, it was like they even kind of blocked my car in so I couldn't even get out. And so, and of course they're all like the, roadster Japanese kind of sort of thing. And at first I'm looking, I'm like, what is this? An Asian biker gang or what? Because again, most of them were of Asian descent. And they all pull over and they're having some kind of a memorial service for somebody because I see that they pull out this big picture of this person. And so they're kind of having a, remembrance of life or celebration of life sort of
Mhm.
thing for people. And so I thought, okay, well, this is interesting, right? Again, I go up here for some peace and quiet. Now I have a bunch of people that are, talking, making a bunch of noise, revving their motorcycles, but I couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
And so I just had to kind of sit there for a little while, and then finally they all packed up, after a half an hour or whatever, and down the mountainside.
Hmm.
And so I thought, okay, I finally have some peace and quiet again, right? And so I'm
Hmm.
sitting there, and literally less than 5 minutes later, another group of people comes and starts making a bunch of noise. And so finally, I'm like, screw it. Okay. I look at the map. I'm like, I could go back down the way I came, or I can go this other way and it'll pop me out over here. So I'm going to go back this other way. So I start driving back, and it's one of those, mountain roads where there's not really places to pull off. But
Mm-hmm.
I found a place where I could pull off, and I kind of looked, and it looked like there was a little ravine that I could go back into, and I'm like, ah, okay, I found my place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I get out and I walk back into this ravine, and literally like less than 100 yards, it just stops into the mountain. It doesn't go anywhere. But there's a little kind of waterfall creek sort of thing that's making some nice water sounds. And I'm like, ah, okay. All right, look around. I find a place to sit. This is going to be nice and peaceful. I can hear the water running. This is going to be
Mm-hmm.
great, right? And so I'm sitting there, but I could hear the cars going by. And I'm like, well, okay, it's nothing like a bunch of motorcycles, so I can handle this. This is going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I hear voices. And they're not little kids, but they're like giggly teenage girls. I don't know, 16 to 22, somewhere in that range,
Mm-hmm.
younger girls, that I start hearing this giggling and carrying on. There are four or five of them, something like that. And again, it's like, right. Well, maybe they just stopped. They're going to get back in their car and they're going to go. No. What did they have to do? They started walking up the ravine too, giggling, blah, 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 blah. And finally, I'm like, screw this, right? Get back in my car. I just drive back home, go back on my patio, and it was more quiet there than in all these places that I tried to get away to.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, I think it's the same kind of learning. I think that what you had today, Brad, is that, we want peace and quiet. I want peace and quiet. I like peace and quiet. Um, I'm not around people on purpose because I want my peace and quiet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is we don't have to go looking anywhere for that peace and quiet. The peace and quiet is actually within ourselves, wherever we are at, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so trying to search for it other places, we're never going to find it. We're going to run into the group of school kids and the parents. We're going to run into the
Mm-hmm.
Asian biker clubs. We're going to run into the giggling teenagers, right? If we go out and we're trying to find it somewhere else, but we can
Mm-hmm.
find that peace and quiet within ourselves.
Yep. Yeah. So once I kind of remembered that story, I was like, aha, the, my lesson for today, the coyote.
Well, and what's funny because you bring up coyotes. So last night, before I went to bed, I was sitting out on the porch, and there's packs of coyotes right by where I live, and so
Mhm.
it's not unusual to see them. But last night in particular, there were kind of two different packs that were howling and carrying on last night significantly. They were kind of echoing each other,
Mhm.
one kind of to the south and one to the north of me. They were very close. And so it's interesting that that's the card that you pulled today because I got a bunch of coyote medicine last night too. So
Yeah.
I didn't
So
pull
yeah.
the
So
card. I heard him yapping.
you don't know necessarily feel the cards like sometimes
Yeah.
that you find in your backyard.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah. So I realized, yeah, I didn't need to go, to find the peace and quiet I needed. I've got peace and quiet right here, and really anywhere I am, because like you said, it's an inside game. It's all in your head. You can control. You can choose
Cheers.
the quiet in your head. The peace in your mind.
Yeah, and what's interesting is actually the last couple of days, kind of from a practice or exercise standpoint, um, of what I've started doing, which actually ties into this too, are some I am statements and kind of I am meditations, if you will, which is something that Saint Germain kind of talked about, the I am principle. A lot of people have, talk about it in self-development as well, personal
Hmm.
development. But, what I've been saying to myself as I calm myself down too is I am love, I am peace. I am love, I am peace. I am love, I am peace. Right? And as I do that, I feel the frequency of love. I feel the frequency of peace, right? And that's where, we really can get that on our own is we have that peace and quiet whenever we're in those vibrations, whenever it's our intention to do it. That for those brief periods of time, we can feel that. And, I feel an immense sense of peace when I do that. I mean, that's one thing this last week, especially, um, I felt a lot more at peace, right? As I've been doing that, as I've been focusing on being peace, right? And reminding myself that I am peace. I am the peace, right? And it kind of, goes back to what Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change in the world you wish to see, paraphrasing, right? That, if you want to see peace in the world, be peace. Because as your frequency changes to that of peace, it will resonate, and that sympathetic resonance will create peace around you, right? People will act differently around you. Um, that energy will carry out throughout the world, and people that are fighting and angry and in war zones and conflict zones, that peace will be felt. That peace will change people's hearts. That peace will bring light and understanding to people who are making the decisions, right? And they will start to vibrate at that frequency as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's powerful to be able to create that within you. Like you said, it's the I am statements are really a great way to embody those things. It's not like I feel peace, but actually being peace. I feel happy. No, actually being happiness. Um,
Yep.
and they seem, just semantics, but it's not. Like it's a difference between just a passing moment, an emotion, a feeling, something short term condition or some sort, and an actual state of being, how you are, you know.
Well, and it took me for a long time, right? Because we were both in Jim Fortin's program, and he talks about be, have, do, right?
We do have,
It's
yeah.
about the being, right?
Hmm.
Be, do, have. And for the longest time, it kind of confused me. Like, what does it mean to be? What does it mean to be?
Hmm.
Be, right? But then when we think about even the word being, a being, I am a being. We talk about beings, right?
Hmm.
Seeing beings. Uh, it's the word be. Right.
Hmm.
And so to me, it's, that kind of coupled with the I am principle, um, has really helped me to understand that more. If I want to be confident, then I am confident. I am being confident. If I want to be love, if I want to be peace, if I want to be anger, if I want to be shame, it doesn't matter,
Hmm.
right? Whatever that vibration is that you want to be or that you are being is the vibration and frequency at which we resonate. And other people can feel that. We feel that, um, as well. So, yeah, if you want
Hmm.
peace, if you want quiet, then be peace, be quiet, be love, be whatever you want to be, and choose to be that, right?
Hmm.
Because that goes back to the choice that you were talking about before.
But yeah, because you can choose to be happiness, or you can choose to be angry. You can choose to be in fear. You have that choice. Again, it's powerful because you can choose the good stuff, but it's also powerful because you can choose the negative stuff too, the lower vibration stuff. You have the choice, and that's the free will we've talked about. Um, you can be how you want to be.
Well, and I think what's important too is, these things are going to creep in all the time.
Hmm.
Annoyance is going to creep in.
Yep.
Anger is going to creep in. Shame, grief, whatever. These things that we don't necessarily want to feel, they're going to creep back in because they're a pattern of behavior that we've created, right? Or certain things trigger us and we get annoyed,
Hmm.
right? And so at that point, it's about letting go and letting in, letting
Hmm.
go and letting in, letting go and letting in. I think we've talked about before, right? So as
Hmm.
soon as we become aware that we're feeling annoyed, well, is that how we want to be, or do we want to be something else, right? Because you can combine these things together. So you can say, oh, I'm feeling a little annoyed right now. I let go my annoyance. I let in peace, or whatever you want to let in, right?
Hmm.
Let
Yep.
go of the one thing, let in something else. And we'll do good at it for a little while until the next thing triggers us. And
Hmm.
then we just have to do it again, right? But the nice thing is that as we practice it, we get faster. We don't sit in that annoyance as long, right? Because we
Hmm.
start to be more aware of it. And the minute that we start feeling that way, if we're quick to let go, let something else in, right? Then we're moving
Hmm.
ourselves. We're constantly moving ourselves back to where we want to be.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, that was my morning lesson. That was what came to me.
So if you want peace and quiet, Brad, where can people find it?
Wherever you are
Wherever you
inside.
are and within yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because, I think again that it goes back to the whole external versus internal. And again, most of the spiritual work is all internal.
Hmm.
It's not about feeling happy because of some external thing. It's
Hmm.
about feeling happy internally, regardless of what's going on externally, right?
Yep.
It's about being at peace, regardless
Hmm.
of what's going on around you, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
the kids, whether it's teenage girls, whether it's the biker gang, whatever, right? It's
Hmm.
about the internal. And so we can always find that when we go inside.
Yeah. Yep. So, so yeah. I mean, maybe a short one today, but get you
That's
guys
a
on.
that's a wrap for this week, huh?
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't. And that's the only thing else to add to that. I think that's it's just a great reminder. Um, we like to look outside ourselves for things or allow those outside stuff to really impact what's going on inside. Um, and if you want the peace, if you want the happiness, if you want all these more higher vibrational things, the way to do it isn't to look outside and try to find things that are going to make you happy or make you at peace or whatever. You got to do it inside. You got to do it yourself, and then you'd be surprised how then that kind of expands to the world outside of you as well.
Mhm. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's one lesson I keep learning
Oh,
every single day. I mean,
oh
this
yeah.
morning, I was battling with myself on the porch, with some of these things that were, trying to creep back in and had to keep fighting myself of letting go and letting something else in, letting go and letting something else in, right? And
Yep.
I'd be good for a few minutes, And then all of a sudden my mind would wander and I'd go back to where I was. And it's like, no, 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 we're not going to go there.
Hmm.
Let go and let in. Right. And that's fighting the good fight that a lot of people talk about. On the spiritual path, there's a lot of warrior kind of metaphors that are used.
Hmm.
And, at least in this incarnation, most of us don't have to pull out a sword and go to war, but we do in a way every day with ourselves, right? And so that's being a warrior in today's uh, living of whatever we're doing, right? It
Hmm.
looks a little bit different, but it's the same, right? When that enemy comes, we have to fight it off, right? When the enemy comes of, you know, going to places we don't want to go, we can't feed it. We have to
Hmm.
fight it off. We have to transition back to where we want to go, right? And there's the old Native American story about these two wolves, and one of them was ferocious and really scary, and the other one was nice and calm. And the apprentice, to their master was kind of like, well, which of the wolves is going to survive? And he said, whichever one you feed. And that's exactly what we're
Hmm.
talking about here, right? If we choose to feed some of these things instead of letting them go, then we're feeding, and that's the wolf that's going to win. If we're
Hmm.
feeding our anger, the anger wolf is going to win. If we're feeding the peace wolf is going to win, right?
Hmm.
And this is how we do it. It doesn't look sexy. Nobody knows that we're doing it, right?
Hmm.
Because as I'm sitting there on my porch, it's like anybody walking by is going to have no idea the battle that's going on
The
inside of
war inside Jason's
The
head.
war inside of Jason's head, where I'm hearing voices.
Hmm.
Um, but but that's what the real fight is, right? And again, it's
Hmm.
it's you can, even the word fight is not necessarily a good word, but it's just about redirecting, redirecting, letting
Hmm.
go, redirecting somewhere else, letting go, letting in, redirecting somewhere else. Um, and the more we do it, the easier it gets. I know at first it sometimes is really hard, and even once you start to get it down, it's like this morning and yesterday, right? I had to put my dukes up, right? Because it was coming at me. But then it'll subside, right? I'll do the work, and then it'll subside a little bit, and then it may come back again, but I just keep feeding the right wolf, right? And things end up turning out exactly the way you want them to be then.
Yep. So we titled this episode "Feed the Right Wolf." Oh.
Feed the right wolf. Get on the peace train. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, with that, we guys thank you guys for watching us today. Hopefully, you're filled with peace and quiet yourself, and that yeah, find some of those higher vibrational things that you're looking for out there. Realizing that it's inside you and not out in the world. So
Yep.
have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.
All right. See you, everybody.